we're running a little behind, so I'm gonna kind of go just hit the highlights of my presentation today. Um, but I was gonna talk about mainly a couple of subjects, Bacani first, and then a couple of diseases that are very similar, stem rot and aggregate sheath spot. Why Bacani? Bacani, I seem to find more Bacani around in the past 3 years or so, and I've been getting more questions about it. Typically, what I see is these plants that are sticking up the canopy, yellow leaves, and when you pull that plant, you slice the tiller, and you see that the tiller is all rotted. Like here, this one here is a healthy tiller. And sometimes when the Bacani is severe, it can kill the plant, like in this picture here. And a lot of times at this stage, you will see the fungus sporulates and produces this pinkish color sporulation on the tiller. Sometimes the plants will produce a panicle, but it's all blanked out. So Bacani it's a fungal pathogen, is seed-borne. It can survive in the soil, but it doesn't do very good. And this is the reason why we do the bleach treatment of the seed, and it works really well. It's not clear why we're seeing more of this disease, more of this Bacani. It's not severe, even though in some cases, I've seen a field at least a couple of years ago where they had quite a bit of Bacani. Here you see that all the yellow leaves is Bacani. They had treated the seed with bleach. But one thing that we figure could have caused the Bacani to be so prevalent is that maybe the seed was sitting in the truck for a little longer than it needed to be, and so that seed before being seeded, and so that seed gets it heats up, and then this heat, if there's any Bacani spores in the seed, those spores will germinate and produce more spores. And that might be why we're seeing some situations where there's a little bit more Bacani. And then there's some growers that are not doing the bleach. It's inconvenient, or maybe trying to save a little bit of money, and that might be why we're seeing more. But you might see some of this in the field. Just be aware that it could be Bacani. All right, so these two diseases, stem rot and aggregate sheath spot, very common. They've been in rice forever. They're not new to us. Their cycles are very similar. They start at the water level. Stem rot rots the tiller. Aggregate sheath spot affects the leaf sheaths, moves up the plant, and it can the leaves start turning yellow and then brown. They die. And both diseases can end up producing a lot of blanking. Aggregate sheath spot can actually get to the panicle and blanked out the whole panicle, but I've never seen that in our conditions in the field. Stem rot causes lodging, and then both diseases produce these resting structures in the straw called sclerotia. And as you accumulate sclerotia in the soil, the disease starts getting worse and worse. So here's the severity. It gets worse if you have more sclerotia in the soil. So over the years, you can accumulate this sclerotia. This is a study where for several years, they did several straw management treatments. So when you burn every year, you don't accumulate the sclerotia because you're killing all of those sclerotia that are in the tissue, in the straw. If you incorporate in the fall, it's not as good, but it's not as bad as if you just leave the straw all on the surface and then don't do anything until the spring. I hear at year 4, all the treatments were burned, so you see a drop in the number of sclerotia in the soil. So if you have these two diseases and they're causing problems, if you're able to burn, that's gonna help a lot. Nutrients affect these two diseases. Nitrogen, if you have nitrogen, high nitrogen levels favor stem rot. And then potassium deficiency, it's going to favor both diseases. And it can make a big difference. If you're low on potassium, you might be seeing a lot of stem rot, a lot of aggregate sheath spot. check your soil levels. 120 ppm is considered optimal. If you're below 60 ppm, you probably need to address potassium, and that might help a lot with the disease. And here's some where I'm going to spend a little bit more time. So one question I usually get is if there are any differences among the varieties in their response to these diseases. And this is a score that's given to the varieties, and you can see that they're all close, but there are some differences. So I did a variety trial this past year. Here's the variety list, and on this trial we had treated and untreated plots. The treated plots were treated with quadris at very early heading, which over the years we've seen that works really well for both diseases. And we do see for stem rot, we do see differences between varieties. Here's your M209 and your M211, lower levels that if you compare to Kalmochi or S102. If we put these same numbers in this way, by days to 50% heading, it's clear, you see that the longer season varieties tend to develop less stem rot than the shorter season varieties. And then again, another way to look at this is, here's your stem rot severity. If we make the lowest one, which was M209, your relative 1, and everything else, we express it according to that, you see S102 and Kalmochi, they're almost double the amount of disease stem rot that M209 had. M206 is right here, sort of in the middle. So some differences that might help managing this disease. Aggregate sheet spot, we didn't see a lot of differences, maybe A202 here, lower level, but our disease level in the field wasn't very high. Our scale goes from 0 to 4, so 4 would be up here, that would be the worst. We barely made it past 1, so low disease level for aggregate sheet spot. We're gonna try again this year. What about fungicides? So like I said, we had treated and untreated plots in this trial. For stem rot, a good reduction in disease severity, 30% on our treated plots across all varieties. And then that resulted in a yield increase of about 4%, 350 pounds, again, across all varieties. Aggregate sheet spot, we saw a good yield, severity reduction, so almost 70%. But then, like I said earlier, our severity wasn't very high to begin with. And so that also this reduction didn't produce a response on yield. And this is the final slide here, and it's kind of a summary of the main diseases we deal with here in California. Right now, we only have one fungicide or one mode of action, which is azoxystrobin and trifloxystrobin. They're both within the same mode of action. And that's what we can use to manage our diseases. And the timing for applications anywhere between the boot stage, about 70 days after seeding, to very early heading. If kernel smut was a problem in the past, or you're still concerned about it, you want to go at the boot stage as well. And for that, what we've seen works best is propiconazole, which is the active ingredient in tilt, and there's many generics. So if you were trying to manage all these diseases, you could do a boot application and affect or give protection against all these diseases.